Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us again today. I'm Alan Locher, and as I said last week, I grew up watching As the World Turns and Guiding Light. I joined the PR department in 1997 and worked on both shows for 13 years before they went off the air. As I was sitting at home last week, I realized that we all must be missing our Oakdale and Springfield families. And that's why today I've got a few friends from Springfield to introduce to you all. So let's get started. Please send me your questions and we'll go from there. All right. Let's, the one and only Kim Zimmer, everybody. So, hi, Kimmer.
Hi, Alan.
Great to see you. Here's Mr. Robert Newman, everybody.
Hey, guys. How we doing?
Hello.
Maureen Garrett, everybody.
We'll do our own clapping.
Here's Jerry. Hey, Jerry.
verDorn.
And Liz Keifer.
Yay! Wow, this is great.
Oh,
Hi.
nice to see all your faces.
Hi, Jerry.
You made it. Hi, Jerry.
Hi, Maureen.
Is that Beth in the background?
Is that Beth lurking in the background?
Yeah. I sent her out for a drill,
right?
Adjusting the lights, yeah.
Well, howdy.
Did we lose our host,
Did we lose Alan?
Alan?
Uh-oh.
Well, that's interesting.
Oh.
So we're all here, but the host was not here. So why don't we just start? Here he comes.
Sorry about that.
There he is.
Had a technical difficulty. So, how's everybody doing? How's everybody doing during this time?
Good. We missed you while you were gone.
Yeah.
Everybody good, safe, and healthy? Your families?
Yeah.
You want to just go one at a time with that answer?
Sure.
Yeah.
Robert, you want to
Go ahead,
take
Kim.
it away?
Oh, well, since we're in this line,
We'll go this way.
my daughter is a frontline nurse, and she had to be tested on Saturday. She had a fever, which wasn't too bad. She tends to run high anyway. So why they're not testing the frontline healthcare workers anyway is beyond me. But so we won't know until Thursday or Friday whether she's positive. So she's having to isolate from her own son, which is very difficult. He's not even 2 yet. So, but other than that, we're all good. You know, everybody's good. And my husband's stuck out in, well, I don't know if he's stuck, but he's in Taos, New Mexico. So I flew back early to be with Rachel and Vincent, my grandson, and he got stuck out there. So now he's afraid to drive back by himself, and I don't blame him.
Point the grandson out behind you.
He's right there. Right there. There he is.
Robert, how's your family?
We're all doing okay, thank you. Our daughter Kendall is a Starbucks manager, and she's still going in 3 or 4 times a week to the only Starbucks they've left open is the drive-through. So they're doing drive-through and mobile orders only at one location, which is not actually her store, but she's still going in 3 or 4 times a week. But they're being very careful about everything. It's a good company to work for, and they're taking good care of them. And then my son Connor, who was recently married in September to Caroline, they both live outside of Boston. They're just working from home, and they're both very healthy. And Britt, as you know, is an interior designer, and her big, giant, ridiculous house in Greenwich that she's working on is still going on. Evidently, residential construction is still considered essential, but she does 90% of her work from home. And for me, I'm supposed to be in North Carolina right now doing the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime, but that's not happening. I was supposed to go back into Perfect Crime in mid-May. I'm pretty sure that's not happening. And then out to the barn, hopefully maybe with Miss Zimmer over there. But I don't know what's going to happen there either. So we're all healthy, though, and I'm thankful for that.
Liz?
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, we're all healthy. I mean, I'm in New York. I'm right above, like, from Westchester, where, it started exploding. But we're all here. Both kids were sent home from college. I've got them both in college. So Keifer is a sophomore in Houston. He's at Rice. So he's he's back here and he's just doing all his finishing up online, and I never see him. And Bella is back. You know, I feel for her because she's graduating. This is her senior year at Wesleyan, and so she had to say goodbye within like 48 hours, just like pack up, go, leave, and no senior anything, no thesis show, nothing. So I feel for her. You know, that's a rough transition to be just shot out of a cannon. But you know, we're doing well. We're in week 4 of this quarantine, and I'm the one that goes out and gets the supplies. Everybody else is home, and I mean, you know, I got them, and I'm making masks. I'm part of a mask guild. Oh,
I'm making masks too.
It's like we've all organized all of the Putnam County, and so I'm a sewer, which is amazing. But it's all good, and I don't know, Bobby. You know, Bobby's up on the roof as we speak. Oh
my God.
Yeah, his crew just went, no, we're not gonna, we're not coming, and so so his jobs have all been postponed. So, you know, if we see bodies fly over the window, let me know.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know.
He's a senior and he's up there. So scary. Oh my God, he's great.
And Jerry, how about yourself? How's everybody?
Everybody's fine. Thank you very much. That's where you keep Bobby these days, huh? I'll make
Up on the roof.
Jerry, you know.
Yeah, I have a son and grandchildren in Rhode Island, and I have a son and a granddaughter in Florida. So we're keeping track of both of the governors of those states, see what they're doing. Here in New Jersey, I'm keeping a very strange relationship with Mario Cuomo, and I listen to him every day to get the facts.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Me too.
My brother.
Jersey as well.
Yeah, and you know, all those projects that you meant to get to, like today's project is take down the Christmas tree because it's bad luck. We're headlong into that, and like other people, I've put my toe in the water for bread baking because I've always been an enthusiastic cook, but you know, it's hard to find flour. It's difficult to find, you know, yeast and toilet paper and flour. So it's.
Are you doing a lot of FaceTiming with your grandchildren?
Yeah, a lot of FaceTime, and thank heaven for FaceTime because oh my God,
really,
it really, you know, so they'll remember you maybe, you know, longer than months, and it's so good to see them. And every time we do see them, it's like, oh, they're getting so mature looking. Like we're missing. So I'll be glad to get back to normal someday.
Someday.
Me too.
And Maureen, you're out in Washington.
Yes, I'm in Washington State, just of Portland, in the suburbs of Portland. And I was wanting to be down at the food forest that we started down in Sonoma County, down in California, but I'm stuck here. But so I'm making the most of it and doing what I always preach, which was turning lawns into gardens. So I've all these plots of, I don't know, lasagna gardening. Do you all know about it?
No,
what's that?
You put cardboard down first, so all the packaging you're getting, you put card down first, and then wood chips and all kinds of organic layers where you do nitrogen, carbon, and you create a garden gradually. And then you put topsoil on the top, and you can plant clover, which gets the nitrogen going. So I'm doing it here with berries and kiwi, and
that's fantastic.
Costa Rica is agroforestry, which is planting trees that provide food, breadfruit being the main one down there. But this is where I am, and my grandnephew is in Portland, 20 minutes away. Can't see him except for, you know, on the different services. And my son John is a teacher in New York and has taken the test and is waiting for the results because he had fever for a week or so. But he's young and strong and he's doing okay. Paul is still down in Costa Rica running that thing down there, and he has asthma, so he's high risk, so he's concerned. But so far, so good. And Christopher has 2 children, grandchildren, and he's down now in Argentina. Of course, there's no flying anymore, so I don't know when we will all get together.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm watching Chopped, so I get inspired to go.
That's what I was just going to ask. Is anybody watching anything good that they want to recommend to the fans?
Ozark for Pelfrey.
Yeah, I hear.
Oh my God.
Season 3.
I told him that if Ozark was a feature film, he'd certainly be collecting his first Oscar.
Yeah,
he's
every person.
Yeah, he's just.
He plays Laura Linney's brother.
Yeah.
Oh,
he's brilliant.
Yeah, I got that.
It's the best work. I mean, he did great work on Guiding Light too, but it's the best work I've ever seen him do. I mean, in the beginning, he reminded me of Jonathan, but as the character grew, it's just he blew the lid off it. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Fantastic. Good for him.
I can't wait to start it. I'm starting that tonight.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I've seen season 1 and 2.
And Schitt's Creek, of course, I never watched and I'm in season 3 now. So, and I just
are you loving it?
Oh, you have such a wonderful treat in front of you. Oh,
it's so good. It's
cool.
I sit with a grin on my face throughout the whole. I watched like 5 episodes in a row, and I'm just like.
That's what we need. More grins, definitely.
They ended it very well last night.
Don't talk about it. Don't talk about it.
I'm not. But it's sad. We need comedies right now, and it's sad to see that go.
Yeah, Modern
Yeah.
Family tonight, which I never
I
watched,
know.
but I'm going to watch the season finale just because.
Oh,
Yeah.
and what about Better Things with Adlam? She's so good. She's
a good show.
Which show?
It's called Better Things, and it's with Pamela Adlon, who she's writing and acting in it, and
Right.
it looks really interesting. And the 4th season is supposed to be especially good.
We've
Good.
been watching Little Fires Everywhere, which is pretty terrific. We just started Poldark on BBC on a recommendation from a friend,
that's
and I'm liking that. And,
I heard Babylon Berlin was really good too.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
I'm liking that. Dark,
Great.
but I like to hear it in the original German, and then with the subtitles, I think I can still remember German.
Yeah.
It's really good. Hey, Robert, is the Little Fires with Kerry Washington and Reese Witherspoon?
Kerry
Yeah,
Washington,
it's
yeah.
based on a novel, and it's some really good work. There's some really good work going on there. And speaking of like Tom Pelfrey, the younger people they're casting these days, they're so freaking good at what they do at such a young age. It's stunning. There's so much lovely work because it revolves around a couple of families, and the 2 young actresses playing the like 16-year-old-ish 2 girls that are the main character. They're just fantastic, And then of course there's Tiger King.
Oh, God.
Which just sucked the life out of my soul. Although I will say, if you haven't seen McMillions, it's sort of similar. It's about people stealing millions of dollars from the McDonald's Monopoly game back in the 80s, I think, and that's actually pretty cool to watch.
I couldn't get through all of Tiger King. I think I stopped.
I watched 3
because 3, and then I was like,
me too.
It's just a bunch of awful people doing awful things.
Yeah, and it gets worse. It just keeps escalating.
It's terrible.
Has anybody seen Flaked? I've been watching that because it takes place in Venice, California, and it's such my little niche. It's like I go back to my California Girl with Will Arnett. It's actually very clever. I like it a lot.
What's it called?
It's called Flaked. Flaked.
And I've been watching Better Call Saul, which I adore. And then I just started sort of on my own time when Britt's working. I just started back watching Breaking Bad from episode 1, season 1. And
that was good.
And I forgot what an amazing piece of work that is. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I guess Jerry's not watching.
I know.
No. Are you there, Jerry?
I am.
Jerry, wake up, buddy.
The Holly Thorpe episodes from the mid-'70s.
Well, that's good.
I
'Cause we
know
have a lot of
Alan's
fans.
doing the same thing.
I've forgotten to remind me.
That's so funny. Speaking of the show, does everybody remember their first day on set?
Very much.
Yes,
Yes. I do.
yes.
Share some highlights.
I was with Chris Burnett eating lobster and drinking champagne. He
Oh.
brought Riva to Springfield, and I was getting a massage by a big beefy guy, and drinking champagne and eating lobster. So what could be a better first day?
I remember that scene.
Yeah,
I do.
the guy
remember
had
too.
so much oil on his hands he couldn't even hold on to my skin because he was so nervous and he had so much grease on his hands. But it was a great day. It was a great day. And Bruce Berry directed. I scared the bejesus out of him. We should have gotten Bruce here today.
I know that would be.
Oh, I remember mine. I was in a restaurant, and I could remember that all I knew is that my hair was around my ear, and all you could see was my ear from the side shot. That's all I could see.
I was in a scene with Rebecca Holland playing Trish. Was my very first scene, walking into a bar and seeing my sister Trish for the first time in a while. And then I sort of made the rounds at like Spalding Enterprises and Lewis Oil, and I had scenes with like Jennifer Cook, and I don't think I had a scene with Burnett that day, but Bruce Berry also directed my first episode. And I actually just posted scenes from that episode about a year ago. I tracked it down. My mom sent me all the videotapes she ever did of every single episode I was
Oh
in.
my God.
So I popped the scenes off, and my hair, of course, was like huge. And I had a shirt open down to like here, and it was very cool looking. And I thought I was just.
That's got to be a lot of videotape.
I thought I was just terrible. I'm watching it, I was like, oh my God, I was terrible.
You were a hunk. I was a fan.
Oh, honey.
I watched a handsome hunk. And then I think I saw you back in California at one point at a gym I had obviously had not come on yet, but you were in between, and I kind of stalked you. I'm just telling you this for the first time now.
Wow.
Just letting you know.
Interesting.
And
when did you
Robert,
come on the show, Liz?
What?
When did you come on the show?
92.
92. Right?
I lurked behind a bush my first day.
Right.
Just lurked.
who were you spying on? Do you remember?
Chair Bear. I was outside of Ross's cottage, right? And I just, yeah, and nobody knew I was back in town.
And you had Sherry Stringfield hair.
And I had Sherry's hair. Yes. They
And Jerry, do you remember your first day on the show?
They're running the camera.
Oh, no, it was great. Mr. Marconi was there, and it was very exciting. But the first day I got in like television, I made a pass at my brother's wife.
Oh,
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 nice.
that's a good first. That's
Yeah,
a good first day.
yeah.
Jerry, were you there for radio?
She was very helpful, of course.
wow.
What year did you start, Jerry?
And then the next day, my second day on the show, I got kicked out of Bert Bauer's living room. I'm not quite sure what I did to earn that, but
I don't think many got kicked out of Bert's living room. I know Roger did. I just watched something today that Roger got kicked out. Bert
yeah,
kicked
Bert was very
him
tolerant.
out the door.
Mary, weren't you Roger's lawyer in the rape trial?
Of course, yeah. That's my very first part of my body, if you will, to be seen, was I was signing in and visiting Roger in jail. So they had me signing in Ross Marler, and then they were going for some young Kennedy thing, so I looked like a young Kennedy, and Roger was very askance because I was not old looking.
Stephanie Gachet, who played Tammy,
I
was
think
saying you guys should all do a reading, online. We should put together a reading of some GL scripts for fans.
Oh, yeah.
Commenting. And to follow up on Liz calling you a hunk, Robert, somebody says, I remember Robert in a Speedo in the Florida Keys. Julie,
Okay. Yeah.
No height.
What I remember is I've seen a photograph of me standing next to John Wesley Shipp back in 1982, maybe. And John is, like just packed out to the gills. And I look like this little skinny girl standing next to him with incredibly short shorts.
Yeah.
Possibly short shorts,
It's interesting to know that John Wesley Shipp became one of the great villains, because
Yeah.
Kim and I worked with him on One Life to Live, and he just was an evil son of a gun.
Yeah.
Really good at it.
And also The Clash.
Yeah. I wouldn't have thought he'd become a great villain, but
Yeah.
he's terrific.
Yep.
Hey, we had a question from another Stephanie. Stephanie was asking, what was the most amazing scene each of you had with Michael Zaslow? Do you all have a favorite scene with Michael?
Well, Maureen would be, and Liz would be. I mean,
Yeah.
I would say the shoot we did down in Santo Domingo, where he kidnapped me into the jungle, and he's got the gun at me, and we're raging at each other. That was all pretty exciting.
Yeah. I remember doing the scene where he had to hit me, slap me, and it was so difficult for him. He was just so, he was so full of everything, because that was so hurtful for him to do, and to be in that position, and so filled with love, and he just oozed everything. Every scene working with him was so powerful. But all of that in the very beginning, when there was all of that, and then it was fun in the beginning, when nobody knew if I was actually working for him or working against him, and he did all that so well. I really missed him.
I remember him. We had scenes together where he was setting me up for something, and he was taking dirty pictures of me, of Riva, I should say.
Like there aren't already enough out there.
And I'm trying to think that he had drugged me or something, so that I was unaware of what I was doing.
Sure. We'll go with that, Kim.
He was great. Loved him.
That's funny. Kim, a fan, David, was saying, do you realize that they're re-airing The Doctor right now on the Retro TV network?
The Doctors, yes. About 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago, I was in IKEA, and someone yelled, Nola. And I was like, that can't be talking to me. And I turned around, and he went, Ms. Zimmer, I just watched you. And I said, oh, on YouTube? And he said, no, I watched you as Nola on The Doctors. I was like, where? I couldn't believe it. But yeah, no, I did a whole interview session with people that were in those, Elizabeth Hubbard, with all these people that were in those first early episodes of The Doctors. Yeah,
It's great
fun.
that they're airing them.
Yeah, they're not
Jerry,
paying us.
Jerry, Donna was saying her favorite ever Ross scene was when Vanessa showed up at your door only wearing the fur coat.
I remember that.
You remember? Yeah, I do too.
I remember that well. And one time she did it several times. I think Dave requested it, but one time she did it, she opened it, and she was 8 months pregnant with Abraham.
Oh, right.
So brilliant.
Like being,
That's hot.
a beach ball, She was mortified and had to look all doe-eyed and everything. My favorite Zaslow scene, though, was not a scene, actually. We were doing some trial that he was involved in some way, and I was doing his defense, and I was in the midst of one of these long speeches, and they had panels that would open and close. They would open and a camera would appear and take your picture, and then, when you did it from a different direction, it would be wall again. Well, one of the panels opened, and Zaslow was there, or at least I think it was Zaslow, who had standing on a folding chair, mooning me. And he had drawn an eye on my cheek. But I made it through. I didn't cut. I made it through to the end of the scene, and they actually bought it. But I could have murdered him.
That's so great.
I just recently saw a picture of his daughter Marika with her daughter, who is a young woman now, which just, blows my mind. But the daughter is like a teenager, but she was beautiful as ever. So,
oh wow,
yeah.
I think I didn't barely ever worked with Michael on camera, but it reminds me of the staged reading we did of episode 13 of Guiding Light at the Museum of Broadcasting in New York for like the 70th anniversary, maybe, or 65th or something.
Yeah,
and Michael played my father in that. And it was also the first time that I thought that there was something going on with him, because he was using this voice. And I thought it was just a choice he was making for the character to do this other kind of voice. And then later at the after party, I realized he was still doing the same voice. And we didn't talk about it at all. It was just a weird observation. And then right from that moment on is when things started getting more and more difficult for Michael. And I think that was sort of some kind of I don't know how that disease works, but there was something going on with him. And that was the first time I kind of went, I think there's something going on with Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also remember just the last time seeing him in his wheelchair and we had just like a really lovely chat, we really had a lovely little chat, and what a guy.
Horrible disease, that disease.
Yeah, my wife's mother has it right now.
Oh, sorry, Robert.
Yeah, it's pretty awful.
Yeah.
It's pretty awful.
Maureen, there's a fan, Patrick, who also lives in Washington State. He was asking, how long have you lived there?
Just 3 years.
That's great. Kim and Robert, do you remember your first scene together? What that was? Selena was asking that.
Wasn't it when I was with Billy in the office drinking champagne out of my shoe, and you walked into the Lewis Oil office?
That sounds right. Yeah.
And didn't know that I was in town.
Yeah, I think that sounds right to me. Yeah.
I think that was about it. The Lewis boys. Yeah.
Well, you had all three of them, so good for you.
Yeah, I kept waiting for little Bill to grow up.
Jeez.
I want Robert to tell the story of, I think it was his first year on the show, maybe, with the 10,000 ducks.
Oh, Robert, yeah.
Right, yeah. I was...
and
Tommy Nielsen was throwing me up against a wall because I was blackmailing Leslie Ann, Caroline Clark, and he threw me up against the wall, and I said, but you ripped me off for $500,000 bucks. And it was just like that. And I saw Tom's eyes sort of like glisten for a second, but because we were so professional, right, at the ripe old age of 22 or whatever we were, we went on with the scene. And we finished the scene, and they were like, "Cut, okay, that's a lunch break." And I was like, "Whoa, no, you can't." I said ducks, and he said, "No, it was very real for the moment." And I was like, "Oh my god!"
You didn't say ducks.
And then a few weeks later, because this was email and all this other kind of communication, it was just regular fan mail. I started getting duck paraphernalia in the mail, there was like a duck T-shirt and a duck umbrella and a duck. I was like, and because of that, I developed the habit of saying, I don't know how much language we want to use here, but I would just use the F word whenever I blew something. I would just say me, and because I knew that they would have to cut. And it's still a habit I have today, as Kim knows, when I'm rehearsing when I'm rehearsing a play and I screw up, I'm like, fuck me,
I believe Crystal Chappelle just said hello to everybody. So
Hi,
great
Crystal.
seeing you all. Hi, Crystal.
Yay!
We'll try and do this with Crystal soon as well, everybody. So, somebody close to all of you had an interesting question, which I thought was great. Jill Laurie. Jill was. All of you have had some, far-fetched storylines over the years.
Some what?
Far-fetched.
Oh, yeah.
what were some of the challenges? Or, each one of you had something. What would you say?
Well, I know when when we were doing, putting the clone story aside, the other one was time traveling through Crystal Chappelle's breasts. that was whenever we had to go through the portrait, it was always through her boobs. And we used to when they were setting up the shots, we used to play with the you could, because they were matching cameras, because they'd have to lock one down. You could put your hand through. You could put your hand through and squeeze her boob. So that was a challenge. But I love that storyline, that time travel storyline, because I got to see Robert do so many different characters.
I enjoyed that
Ron
story
Raines,
until
Ron Raines too.
Yeah, playing the characters was fun.
Yeah.
But then later in that story, I went with you, I think, through that painting, and that's what it just got like ridiculous. And then I also had the mind control drug story with
Jordan,
with Annie.
And wasn't Jordan?
Oh, Annie and Terry. Too? Annie and Terry, right? Annie and Terry. Dwight was just asking about that as well. The truth serum story.
Yeah, it wasn't Cynthia's Annie, I don't think, right? It was.
No, it was. Yeah, what was her name?
I can't remember. Yeah.
Oh.
I just saw a picture of her.
But she would put something in my aftershave, and then she would say, "Josh, sit down," and I would sit down and do whatever. And I still remember she had a thing where I was going after Cassie, and I was outside of Cassie's hotel room door or something, like, "Please let me in, please just let me in for a few minutes," because she had convinced me that I was in love with Cassie. So that was some horrible acting on my part. And we'll just leave. I think you're right. We'll just leave the clone story out of this.
Yeah,
that's a whole other conversation.
Casey just reminded us. Signe Coleman was that.
Right.
Signe Coleman. Yeah, right.
Signe Coleman. Thank you, because I totally blanked. Anybody else about some of the challenging storylines?
Oh, well, the worst one had to be kidnapping the children. Oh, no, finding that I was the alphabet kidnapper. It was like we were all wondering who it was going to be. And then on Friday, they called me down and said, "It's you." I said, "No way."
I remember that.
I totally forgot the children. That's great.
And then we had to kidnap them all and take them to the woods and put drugs in their hot chocolate. I mean, I don't know how.
So well.
I remember that.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Maureen,
was that the nursery rhyme?
Yes, the nursery rhyme stalker. Right.
Yeah.
And we have a glove, a black leather glove, enter the screen and leave nursery rhyme. And we were all wondering who it was going to be.
And Liz, yours has to be Jerry and O'Leary.
Well,
yeah,
because
I remember AC directing some scenes with you guys. They're hysterical.
Right, with the two different fathers. I mean, the thing I found brilliant was that Blake was allowed to do all these crazy things. It wasn't. I never viewed them as obstacles because, well, of course, this would happen to Blake. I mean, I think it was harder on Jerry. Watching Jerry, we used to call it spin the beanie. Because he'd have the metaphorical beanie on his head that he'd have to spin because he had to be so stupid not to see what was right in front of his face. And that, like that scene when the night after O'Leary and I who's that? What? O'Leary and I get drunk on the pool table. Oh, there's the poo-poos. And because he's underneath the bed when Jerry comes home. You know, he has to do that whole scene.
Yeah, I think AC directed that scene.
None of it's happened.
I want to see it again. It was just spin the beanie. That's what we'd always say, spin the beanie when I had to be traced.
I admired you for that. You could handle anything.
I remember how stupid I had to be with Annie.
Yeah,
she was doing all that stuff with me. I'd be like, "Are you kidding me?"
That's a harder job.
The same thing. I had a double beanie because I had to go through the whole Jane Elliott storyline where
Jane
he
Elliott.
was doing 3 phases.
Oh, wow.
And I was not supposed to see anything. I opened the door every night and say, "Honey, who'd you kill today?" And let it get that. I had to be blind to so many things.
Who were the Los Tres Amigos, Jerry? Was that you, me, and Jane?
No, Amanda.
Amanda. Right. Kathleen, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
I loved Amanda. Yeah, Amanda was great.
Yeah,
And then
Um,
Toby
so-
Poser.
Amanda
Toby.
on the set she had to do a scene with a rhododendron. She was talking to plants. It was difficult.
Mhm.
But she always mentioned it to me. She said, "This is not as bad as the rhododendron scene."
But truly, the true genius of all of you is you made everything work. I mean, that all these fans who are turning out. I mean, this show lasted for as long as it did because all of you truly, the writers wrote it on the page, but you had to make us believe it, and you guys really did. Somebody just brought up Marge, and I know Marge passed, and can any, share some fun Marge stories? I mean, what a classy lady she was. I mean, she made us laugh too, huh?
Well, and she had a tough job because she had to, step into Beverly McKenzie's shoes, and those were some pretty big shoes to fill. But she did it well. It was a different character, I think, with Marge. But she was funny. She was
her laugh!
funny.
I still hear her laughter ringing through the hallways.
Oh
there.
yeah, she's so funny.
Such a dame. Yeah.
Yeah, she was a dame, right? Is that what you said, Liz?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If she was in the UK, she'd be, Dame Marge Doucet.
Yep.
And I didn't realize that when she started, it was relatively soon after her son had died.
Yeah.
I mean, she was amazing. She had amazing courage and strength to she moved from us. She moved and she created this whole life, and that was tough. So
she was a tough lady, classy, tough lady.
She was a very classy lady, but no one loved to tell a dirty story more than Margie.
Good.
And then laugh.
Rest to the minds. She would always floor everybody. The sailor joke coming out of her mouth.
Maureen, and her son had died from AIDS, So she really tough what she put up with, what she had to endure. Maureen, some fans were asking what kind of dog and what's your dog's name?
Yeah, this is POTUS, named
POTUS.
4 years ago. 4 years ago. And he's a Labradoodle. And he's
cute.
Great fun. Through all of this, I mean, he's lots of laughs. He's very funny. He's a comedian.
Oh, wait, Beth.
There's Beth.
Yay.
Hi, Beth.
And this is my personal trainer, Millie.
Oh my God. What a cutie pie.
5 walks a day.
Oh, sweetie. Is that
my dog?
These days of pets are really something.
Oh, look how cute. I love it.
Aren't they very healing during a period of time to have a pet at home? I mean, I have 3 cats that are just like saving us. Just the hug, and I've got one asleep over there. But pets are just the best.
AC has my dog in New Mexico.
You don't have your dog. You don't have
I don't have my dog.
No, you don't have AC or your dog. That's not fair.
I don't have my 2 dogs.
Hey, Liz. You started on the show relatively young, right? Like in 92?
92, yeah.
And you took over for Sherry. Did you find that difficult at the time?
Oh, God, yes. Well, yes and no. Because, I'd been such a long time fan that it was in my DNA. I knew this show. It was in my blood. And so there was a part of me that said, well, she chose to leave, so it wasn't like they were saying, no, we don't want you and we're going to replace you. She chose to leave. So as long as that was in my head, I went, somebody's got to take over for her. So it might as well be me. And so it ironically gave me a little bit of courage in that way. I just kept talking myself through that. But as Jerry would know, in the beginning, it was a little tough being compared, to Sherry, because Sherry is brilliant. And this is really kind of funny because my daughter, Bella, is doing an experimental film class at Wesleyan, and she's doing something about Guiding Light. I don't know exactly what it is, but she's going back and watching everything now for the first time. She never saw it. And so it was really kind of, and of course it all came up again. She goes, God, I was watching the scenes that Sherry was doing before you came in. She was really good. I need a lot of wine now. Happening. But no.
I remember Liz's audition in that we had gone through, I think, 3, 4, 5 girls, and then Liz was next, and Betty Ray just sort of sidled up to me and said, I think I found your Blake. And when I did the scene with her, I knew Betty was, I saw Betty was always right. She had good taste.
Did Betty cast each one of you?
Yeah.
Yes.
She did. Did you all audition for the characters you ended up playing?
Yeah.
Yes. I did when I did my screen test, there were 4 other actors or 5 other actors there testing that day. And one of them was Scott Bryce. And they cast him out of that audition to play Craig Montgomery on As the World Turns. Yeah.
Yeah. I screen tested for Eve first. And they were like, "You're not right for this." And then it turned around just a few weeks later, where they said, "You might be right for this, though," and then brought me back again. So I came back. I first tested with Vincent, and then I tested with you, Jerry, and yeah, that one was much better. And I remember with the Eve, they were like, she's a little more stoic, she doesn't quite, the energy's different. And I just didn't quite have that. So I was like,
Mimi Torchin just commented, Betty was the greatest.
Yeah.
Betty was the greatest.
Yeah. Betty had her work cut out for me, for herself, with me, because I was not Pam Long's first choice for this character. Betty fought for me, so.
When I auditioned,
wise choice.
Yeah. Who was first choice? Who Pam wanted? That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I know who Pam wanted.
Oh.
No.
Yeah, a really good friend of hers. Right, Pam? What, you were going to say something, Jerry?
Oh yeah, the day I auditioned, I auditioned for some other show in the morning, and then Guiding Light in the afternoon. And by the way, Michael Tylo was there too. Guiding Light had a good habit of bringing in actors, and if they're not right in their mind for this role, they'll bring them back in another role, and they did that later on with Michael Tylo. But Betty Ray, I came out of Betty Ray's office. This was before I had put anything on tape. This was, preliminary stuff. And I came out, we had done a scene at her office, and we came, and she was standing with me by the elevator. And I was just sort of looking at my shoes while she was telling me out, because she liked the fact that I was from Minnesota. And I just looked at her, and she looked at me, and she said, "You can do it better, can't you?" And I said, "I think I can." And she said, "Come back to my office." And we did the scene again. I was much more relaxed, or whatever it was.
Wow.
And
that's fantastic.
I don't know. Oh my God, that's a great story.
But my life could have gone a totally different way if Betty hadn't been so patient.
And she was the best to read with too. I mean, she just
great actress.
Yeah.
I remember she read me in her office, and then she took me straight down the hall to meet Doug Marlin. Because she just was like, "I think this is our guy," which was really lovely to hear. And then they handed me that 8-page scene and said, "Can you come in tomorrow and screen test?" And I was like, "Okay." And while I was waiting to test, she would come out during the breaks, and she played cards with me, Pinochle. I think she was just trying to sort of calm me down to kind of, help me to settle. And then we did the test, and Bruce Berry directed the test, and so on and so forth. I just remember just that story you just told, Jerry. Just the really personal touch that as actors, sometimes we don't get anything like that from casting directors. They just want you to come in, do your thing, leave. And I don't know that I've ever heard of a story where a casting director would follow somebody out to the hall and say, "You can do that better. Why don't we do it again?" That's a fantastic story. And she loved theater. She loved theater actors too.
That I think everybody should follow today if they're not doing it. Not many people did it in the past, but you did your scene, and then she had you sit down or stand up, whatever was most comfortable for you. And she would just be talking to you and asking you where you're from, but all the time the tape was rolling.
Right.
Yeah.
And I found out later that she showed these intimate things to other people who had the decision-making power. And she showed them the scene, and then she'd show them the serious little talk that they had afterwards. Because you can see the person. Is this person capable of doing all this material forever and ever?
Yeah.
That's really interesting, because she had her conversation with me on tape that I didn't realize I was being taped was all about my mother. Holly, Maureen. It was all about my mother in real life, and it was all about my relationship with my mother, and I was very close to my mother, and my father had passed, and so that this is now all news to me now. That how
the testament to her talent, really. To know. I mean, to come out and say that to an actor is, you don't really hear that from anybody when they're telling a story of how they were cast on a show.
Right.
And she would go to every, not just off Broadway or off Broadway show. She would go to off Broadway. She was constantly, like, several nights a week. She was at some other theater looking for actors, and seeing people's work. I don't know that there's a lot of casting directors that even do that kind of thing.
Right.
Kim and Liz, we had some questions. Can you share some memories of Facts of Life, designing women, and Seinfeld roles?
Wow.
Can you hear me? Because I took my head thing off.
We can.
I thought it was me that was making the static, but it's not. So, my designing women was at a time when it was during the time Delta Burke was having issues with the show, and she was kind of blackballed from the cast. And so Linda Bloodworth, from what I understand, brought me in to kind of see if I had the potential to maybe be, another regular on that show, or that they were going to spin off another show, which then later became Evening Shade with Mary Lou Henner. But my whole being there was a test on so many different levels. It was a test to see how well I worked with that group of women. It was a test to see if they thought they would spin me off on this other show with Hal Holbrook, and to see if Dixie liked me, to see if I warranted having a job with her husband Hal, and then but Delta Burke never showed up to the set until much later to do her scenes, and she did all of her scenes in one day because she didn't want to be around any of those other women, and she was the sweetest, nicest. She was so, true Southern charm. So I don't know who the vixen really was on that show that was creating all that tension, but she was lovely. I had a ball doing that show. They were great.
I feel like I heard that they might be.
What?
I feel like I heard they may be remaking Designing Women, or one of those. I'll have to double check and let you know, but I feel like there might be a remake of that coming.
Well,
Designing
if they
Women.
do, Maureen should go up for the Dixie Carter role.
Oh, wow. Great.
Southern. I could do Southern.
Oh,
yeah.
Fabulous.
She would be great in that role.
That's so
and then Seinfeld was an interesting thing too, because what was going on that they were getting ready for the big finale show, which was with Bette Midler as their guest. And so they weren't doing a live audience for my episode, which was really the only reason I wanted to do that show, because it was in front of a live studio audience and I was really looking forward to that. But we had no audience for this, for my episode of Seinfeld. But Jerry would sit at the side of the camera and laugh at everything. You know, I mean, he was the greatest boss between Jerry and what's his name from Kirby?
Larry David.
Yeah,
Larry David.
It was great. Well, I know now why that show was such a success, and it has to do with that cast and those people that were involved with that production.
Did anyone watch this season's Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Yeah.
Not yet. Yeah.
It was a good season. Larry's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. And Liz, do you remember?
Oh, sure. Because Kim, I love working in front of a live audience. I did so many sitcoms. I think my whole a decade before I went on to Guiding Light was just being everybody's girlfriend. So I just made a living of it. And so George Clooney, I guess the test was to be with George Clooney on Facts of Life. And that was fun. You know, that was George in his early days. And I actually have George, I know George from several different places throughout my life. So I've had an opportunity to see him here and there since. And, you know, he actually apologized to me when I saw him 10, 13 years later, because he was a little, he was a lot of fun, but he was a little bitter. He had just finished, he had just gotten divorced, and he was not happy with women. And he was kind of, you know,
mean.
Okay, but he admitted it. He goes, I was kind of a dick back then. In the beginning, he just had a chip on his shoulder. He had something happening. It was fine. I mean, he was fun. I think he probably tried to hit on me, and I said no, and then he got mad. But in a good way. It was all fine, you know. And we ended up having a really cool conversation later on. And he worked with Sherry on ER, because he said, "Oh yeah," he goes, "Yeah, you guys are all dames." That, you know, that was his word, so I stole that from him. But it was fun. I love doing all of that. I love it. Cheers, all of that. Happy days.
It's so great that we still get to see all of those. I mean, they keep re-airing Facts of Life. The Seinfeld episode with you, Kim, is on all the time.
I know. I get my check for 25 cents.
My Full House episode is what put my kids on the social map, because that apparently became this big pop icon, that whole Full House. And I think I kissed everybody on that show, that particular episode. I was everybody's girlfriend on that show. So yeah, that one is
That's funny.
For my teenagers. My mom was on Full House. Yeah. so silly.
Some fans were asking, what was the average number of takes? Which I think, you know, first take.
One.
Yeah.
One was probably the average.
Yep.
1.2 or something.
It depended
like
on
that.
if Jordan Clark was in the scene with you, because you usually had some laughing spells, or Larry Gates. I mean,
or Dan Cosgrove, yeah.
We had, or Danny. We had
man.
a lot of days where none of us could keep a straight face, and they'd cut, and then, you know, and you try not to look at anybody, and that would make you laugh even more, right? I mean, it was that kind of stuff. Trial, you know, courtroom scenes were famous for it, because you have so many actors sitting around not having anything to do, and they were misbehaving.
While Jerry was at the front of the courtroom, probably having to
working his ass off.
Yeah. Joe Green.
Everybody looking away. But let's take a year, 1978. On an average day in Guiding Light, you'd have a blocking, camera blocking. Then you'd have a dress rehearsal. And then you'd go through it. Then somebody would come out, and you'd have notes.
Yeah.
Well, fast forward to like 2018. It's shot from a cannon with suggested lines.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are no dress rehearsals. You literally go from the dry room to taping, and that's how much it changed. And so that's why Robert said, "How many takes? One," because they move on. Let's go. Time became totally of the essence, and everything else was superfluous. But thinking back on those, it was so leisurely in 1970 hoo-ha, where you'd have notes. That's unheard of today. And, the scenes were longer too. And
longer. I was just going to say longer scenes because that was the thing that I think there was a lot of things about those last 2 years that were really, really difficult. But I think what I missed the most were these really long segment scenes between Josh and Reva or whoever, that where you really would have 7 or 8 pages, and you would have 2 or 3 of those during the course of that show. And there was such a great arc to play. It was like doing a 1-act play every day.
Yeah.
And you also did them in order for the most part. So you really had a sense of the beginning and a middle and an end of that particular segment for that show. Whereas, God, when we went to the format of just shooting all of Josh and Reva's living room scenes on Monday for the week, I mean, there were times I'd look up at the monitor at a show and I'd be, oh, that's where that scene goes, because I couldn't keep it all in my head. And they purposely made the scene shorter because they felt that was kind of the new normal for the audience or whatever. I don't know what their thinking was, but I did miss those early days.
I was just watching Jerry and Liz's Blake and Ross's wedding just before signing on to this.
Which
and
one?
just listening to your vows was like, it went on forever. Like today they'd be making you would never have had that time to share that emotion with the audience, because today we'd be moving on to another scene. It was amazing to see how long the scenes were back then. I just didn't remember them stretching for so long, and it was really enjoyable.
And the arc of the story too. Stories would, Doug would write stories and Pam that would go on for 6 months, maybe, the overall arc of a particular story, but that changed too. It would be like, they'd get in and out in like, a few weeks, on a story.
Yeah.
There's some really stunning, when I think about all the way back to Doug and how he wrote so much of that show, including a lot of the dialogue on his own. It was just amazing that he could keep all of those stories and characters in his head. It's just stunning.
I missed a lot of that. The end, when you all, the whole show kind of crumbled down. But this wasn't a part of it. But I remember how fast stories would change. That you're suddenly, I'm in love with. No, I'm in love with that one. I remember that. I was in love with the son of that.
Yeah. I'm what? I'm suddenly in love with Ben? Okay. I don't know how that happened.
Sebastian, that was another story. That was
God, yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Before we all go, some fans were asking, I think it'd be a great way to end, to share some memories of Sharita Bauer and Larry Gates, some of your fond, people. We got a lot of questions about them.
Well, I didn't have the good fortune to really work with Sharita at all. I think I maybe had one scene very early on, but of course Larry was my dreamboat. And I think my very favorite day was the first Josh and Reva wedding, when Larry was having some prostate issues, and he would get laughing and he'd go, oh, I just peed. And I'd go, well, you know what, Larry? So did I, because I got pregnant and nobody knew. So I had that big wedding dress on, and I said, but I don't have to worry about it, because all I have to do is squat down in this wedding dress and nobody's going to know anyway. So we would compare pee-pee stories. I love that man. Robert, you spent a lot of time with him when he was, so sick and close to the end of his life.
Yeah, those last couple of years, I would drive up to his house every couple of months, and we just sit and talk. And now I've kicked myself for not bringing along a camera
or a tape recorder,
or a tape recorder, and because we would talk about the craft, we would talk about life, we would talk about fathers, and it was just a stunning time. And watching him just get so much smaller over those last year in particular was really striking. But still that big laugh you were just describing, Kim.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, just such a he was a real mentor to me, and probably the most influential person in terms of the way that I approach this craft. You know,
Robert and I
was
talk a lot about the day that we had to actually do the HB memorial, and with Robert, myself, and Jordan, and how tough that was, but how inspirational, and
it sort of mirrored the story, because we'd be laughing. Kim and Jordan and I would be laughing about Larry's stories, and then they'd roll tape and we'd be laughing and crying about HB stories. It was like, it was such an interesting. And then the quick thing about Sharita, because that's really you guys, but she and I did have that one series of scenes in the hospital after Josh had driven into a tree and was paralyzed, and she wanted them to do a story about her battle with cancer, and she had her leg amputated, I think, from the knee down in real life, and then she wanted to tell that story on camera as well. And I still remember that scene, because, you know, she was like, you got to buck up, and you got to get going, you got to get out of that bed, and you got to, you know, and also the way she was a real, like you, Jerry, too, she was a real inspiration in terms of fighting for fellow actors. Mm-hmm. She always stood up for others. And Jerry did that as well, and that's part of what led to my many years working as a representative for the union.
Oh, wow.
I remember she was, I started then with no experience in front of camera, and it was just green coming into New York, and started this job. And she would be so generous and so helpful to me. She would have me watch the scenes afterwards and say, see what you're doing right there, what you're doing with your mouth, you're holding there, don't do that. Ooh. And I was thankful to her for steering me that way. And I remember feeling, I didn't know how to thank her. I didn't know what you do. And I was going to a vacation to Paris, and she got me the message that there's some perfume she loved. And I was able to find that and bring it back to her. I always felt so good that I could thank her. She was lovely.
She was always the kindest to the newest. The people who came on, to give you an idea, it was such an ensemble back in '78 or so, that when I came on, they actually threw a welcoming party for me. And then people in the '80s, they kept coming on so fast that you couldn't keep track. But she was always, and she taught me well just by example, to always, because she knew how uncomfortable the newbies were. And and particularly, she taught me to be nice to the ladies, and, you know, in bed scenes and all of that.
Well, I'm sure Liz could agree, since she watched. I mean, I loved watching Bert, for sure.
Yeah, Jerry, she taught you well, because you did that for me. You know, I didn't work with Sharita. She said that you were that role. For a model for everyone, but and of course you were so generous and wonderful to me. You treated me like a lady, sort of, in those bed scenes. Those were fun. I miss all of my crew guys, and Judy too. I have them around me. I really miss them so much. You know, I couldn't have done any of that without them. But anyway.
I miss hair and makeup people. The time that we spent so much time there in front of the mirror, and they really set us up so well. They were so supportive.
There was a lot of laughter in those rooms, for sure.
Oh, those people knew everything.
Yeah.
They knew all of our deepest, darkest secrets.
Yes, because you gave it all to them. You were in their chair.
I always think based on that, based on the makeup room.
I remember when Sue Sacavino was my main makeup artist early on. Yeah, and when we were doing Josh and Reva's first wedding out on that location shoot, and I had to get on a horse, she was the only other person that knew I was pregnant. And she was like, you cannot get on that horse. And I was like, I can get on the horse. I'm fine. I'm I do aerobics, for God's sake. And she was like, yeah, I'm going to go tell him. And I was like, don't you dare. So, she let me do it, but she was like, she was so protective. She was my other mama.
She was a mama. She did my makeup for my screen test. I remember that.
And of course, Joe Cola.
Helen.
Joe Cola.
Joe
Joe with the glasses.
Joe Cola.
Joe and Rose.
And we all loved Helen.
Oh my God.
Helen is my soul sister, mama.
Yeah.
Like that. She was the best. So.
Talk about
Liz, do you want to tell people about your podcast?
Oh yeah. So I co-host a podcast called Let's All Feel Better. And I feel really fortunate that I was able to get it up and running before all of this, chaos is in quarantine and life shifting, changing, situations happening now. But it's kind of a continuation of the dressing room talks we used to have all the time, Jerry.
Yeah.
But it's about helping people. I mean, I'm taking from all my life coaching training and everything, but it's just getting out there and having these juicy conversations with my friend Callista, who's a wonderful writer and actor, and she's part of my theater community up here. It's just about standing in your power and learning how to navigate change and building resilience. I mean, everything that pertains to today. So it's helping people through this transition. And this is what I've been doing the last couple of years. I mean, I've been acting too, but I've been this has been my passion. And the fact that this is all coming down now, I'm great. Just get out
and
there.
Can they find this on iTunes and Spotify and all those?
I'm on wherever you listen. It's called Let's All Feel Better. This is my logo.
That's great. And Kim, when does
some point
Animal Kingdom come back?
I don't know. They got 5 episodes in the can, I think, before this all everything shut down. And he gets emails from John Wells, once a week saying, we're coming back. And Jake's like, oh, maybe in your mind we are, but so they're hoping,
I love that show.
Yeah, they're hoping that they're going to be able to, be back in a month or so, and I'm sure things will change on set. But yeah, I mean, everybody would like to be back at work, but not if it's going to,
put anybody in danger.
To the beginning of all this again.
Yeah.
Safety first, right? That's what we used to always say doing stunts. Safety first.
Yeah.
For sure.
I was looking away because I just got pictures of my grandson. It's a beautiful day here, so he was shooting a bubble gun and he had popsicle juice all over his face. It was cute. So
that's
sorry.
great.
I was a little.
Well, I really can't thank all of you enough.
Thank you, Alan,
for doing this. All of the fans. I mean, they miss you guys immensely. I could, everybody's missing their families right now, so it's nice to see all your faces. So I really appreciate.
Thanks for putting this together, Alan.
Yeah, thank you, Alan.
You got it. We'll definitely try and do more. As long as we're home, we'll try and do some more.
Yeah,
Anytime.
not going anywhere.
We're not going anywhere. Stay safe, everyone.
Love you all.
Bye. Love you all. Bye.
You're kicking my butt. On Words with Friends, Maureen's kicking my butt.
Oh, she told me. Maureen, you're kicking her butt on Words with Friends. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.